Hi, I'm Pat, and I'm the father of an HLHS kiddo, Micah, and this is review of NPCQIC's Global Single Ventricle Learning Series through the Heart University. This is webinar number 5's review. This is in the Micah Mason Foundation's HLHS Community Review series. So we're going to get into what the 5th webinar was mostly about, and the primary purpose of the fifth webinar was to talk about ventricular assist devices, or VADs, V-A-D, ventricular assist devices. So what a ventricular assist device does, it assists the ventricle function of the heart, and as the name implies, it's a device, so it's a medical device. So it's a mechanical or electromechanical device, which means they're not talking about a biological thing here. We're talking about some kind of heart pump or some other way to assist the ventricle function of the child or teenager or adult. The first part was called Life with a VAD, or Life with a Ventricular Assist Device, and it was done by Brandon Collinsworth. He formerly had HLHS. He was born with HLHS, I believe. I have to double check on that, but he is a patient giving the presentation, so it was very good. He basically talked about his life with a VAD. He had it was so internally installed, and he had a wire running out of his chest, and kind of a port thing. Anybody who's dealt with ports knows you gotta be careful with those and keep them clean and keep them out of water, and so it has some effect on its life. And he had a battery in a backpack, or a little case he had to carry around everywhere with him to keep the ventricular assist device functioning at all time. And he basically just talked about his life. So when he got on the VAD, because he was going into heart failure, and he was starting to show other problems, and that's typically why they bring VADs in, ventricular assist devices or other devices like this, is because something's gone wrong. Typically it's heart failure or other problems, and so a lot of times when they go on the VAD, they get a boost. Life becomes better, things become easier. As we know, the blood carries all your stuff around, so oxygen, food, waste. So it's doing that stuff better, your overall life gets better. And so that's what he talked about. His life had a boost to it once he got the VAD installed. He talked about the external lead for the battery. So the lead for the battery exited his body and went into an external battery pack that he had to keep with him at all times. He had to keep the hole clean. Talk about there's a high importance of caregiver and support. He's married, and so his wife helped him quite a bit, and his parents, and so there's a lot of need there for help and support. It's difficult to do this kind of stuff alone. So as with our kids, as they get older, they're still going to need a network of help and support. No water sports or roller coasters. A lot of us don't do the roller coasters because a lot of our kids have pacemakers, or just it's just not recommended they have any chest compression or impact or anything like that. So that's not really new, but no water sports, and that's because of that external lead and the battery. And his VAD, which is what most VADs are, was a bridge to transport, and that was a bridge to transplant. And so what that means is he's gone into heart failure, so his current circulation setup, Von-Tant setup, was not going to work long term, and the next step was a transplant, but transplants take a while to come by, and so the VAD was to boost his life and to basically get him to the transplant. is effectively what it was, and that's kind of what the VADs are sort of viewed as in general. So that was that presentation. The second presentation was by Dr. Angie Lortz, and it talked about patient selection for SVADs. The first part was talking about what Fontan failure is, and so Fontan failure, the right side failure is not helped. The ventricle failure, the SVAD will help, and heart failure. So VADs can help in certain circumstances and not other circumstances. So if you have a right side failure, your VAD is not really going to help with that because it's there to help the ventricle. It's a ventricular assist device. If you have high enough blood pressure and enough blood in the body, a VAD will help. And ventricular failure, it will help. So it'll help in heart failure, but it won't help in necessarily in liver failure or renal failure or plastic bronchitis, or if there's some other problem, it's not necessarily going to help. So then she talked about device selection. The two biggest issues is you want to select a device that isn't going to cause the heart failure to occur more rapidly. So you don't want to hurt the heart more than it's already hurt by the installation of the device, and you have to watch out for bleeding and clotting disorders because it's an exterior thing that's being introduced to the body, and like all of our kids who typically have some kind of Gore-Tex tube or some other kind of tube in the heart that they have to take aspirin to keep from all of that clotting up. It's the same situation here with these ventricular assist devices. They have to be kept from clotting, otherwise they'll stop working. Timing when to introduce the VAD, that is when to put the VAD into the patient, is often very difficult because it's often irreversible decision. Installing the VAD is very invasive. You're usually cutting into the heart. You're making lots of changes, and so it's often seen as irreversible. Sometimes it is completely irreversible because the portion of the heart it's replacing is effectively stopped working, and so the goal is to get the VAD in a timely manner. If you put the VAD in too early, you could be if you put it in too early, then the system may not be as bad off as you thought it was, and introducing the VAD actually makes things a little bit worse, especially since it's irreversible. On the other hand, if you introduce the VAD too late, then it won't be enough to keep the circulatory system, and the patient alive to get them to transplant. And so there's a balancing act because and part of the problem with the data is that most individuals who have VADs went on VADs because they went into heart failure or they had other problems, and so there's not a real clear picture of, nobody who's doing well goes on a VAD, right? And because of that, it's only fairly sick people who end up going on VADs, so the numbers aren't great, but that's because it's fairly sick people. And so there's a research difficulty there in being able to tell exactly what the right time is to introduce the VAD. So it's a bridge right now. It could be a bridge to transplant. That's what we talked about with Brandon Collinsworth, the original person. So it's a bridge to get you while you're on the waiting list if you're in heart failure, to keep your life going while you're waiting for that transplant. Could be a bridge to recovery, and it depends on what's going on and what problem you've got, and what the specifics of the heart failure look like. It could be a bridge to eligibility or decision for transplant, and so instead of a bridge directly to a transplant, it could be a bridge to figuring out, can this person take a transplant? And then finally, it could be a bridge to end of life, or what's called destination therapy. And that doesn't necessarily mean, getting a VAD would be a death sentence necessarily. It's just saying this may be it. Like, we don't think your system could handle a transplant, but you can do a VAD, and you can last as long as you can with the ventricular assist device. The next piece was talked a little bit about survival to transplant. You had 69% survival to transplant with the ventricular assist device, so that's not bad numbers. Again, a lot of that has to do with the timing of when the VAD was put in. If you waited too long and the system was too far down, then a VAD may not have helped. But that doesn't stop people from trying, and so that's what may drop the numbers on that one. So 69% is not bad numbers. The VADs are getting better, so you're seeing longer and longer life with a VAD. It used to be a couple months, maybe 6 or 7 months, maybe a year. I want to say there was one case on there of one girl who went 18 months with almost a full heart. It was almost a fully mechanical heart. It was kind of two different heart pumps, one for the right, one for the left side. And those were ventricular assist devices. And she lived like that for a while. And so the mechanical side of things are getting better. And that was a piece of that presentation. The final presentation was Dr. Morales, and it talked about VAD support and surgical considerations. So it's kind of threefold. The strategy is not to just say, okay, we'll do a VAD and then move on, but it's to use a variety of interventions based on the variety of failures. So what they're seeing is that most Fontan failures are not simple. It's not just, okay, the left side of the heart's given up, or the liver's going, or the kidneys, or you've got some other problem. It's usually a combination of things that's going on, and it's sort of because the whole body is affected by the Fontan circulation, it's sort of everything might be going downhill slowly, and some things are going downhill at a different rate. And so the first thing you catch. And so it's very important to work with your cardiologist and to get an early referral and to watch for all the failing Fontan signs so that okay, maybe it's time to start talking about VADs or start talking about transplant, depending on how far gone you are and what's on the market. There are roughly 1,000 or so Fontans a year. 1 to 2,000 Fontans a year, and so there's a lot of kids with this who are coming down the line, and so there is a market there for these devices, and there are groups who are working on new VADs, ventricular assist devices, and other similar stuff for kids. HeartWorks comes to mind as one that's they don't have a VAD in trial, but they are kind of picking up a lot of these ideas off the shelf because the market's not a big market, and so a lot of the big medical pharmaceutical device companies have sort of dropped it, and so we've got more specialized companies, and one of the ones that's starting to pick up the pieces from all that is HeartWorks, and they're working on their own set of VADs. So hopefully in the future those will continue to get better, but we're seeing a lot of success with the VADs, especially in the bridge to transplant, and with improvement in quality of life. And there, it's a balancing act. You can't go swimming anymore with it, but it's worth it if you can get up and walk around a lot. So that was the main takeaway from the learning series is VADs are pretty heavily used. They're being more and more used and being tweaked. And that for each individual, it's important to work, as it always is, to work with your cardiologist, to work with your surgical team to figure out when the VAD is going to be right for you, if you're an HLHS patient, or your child or teenager or son or daughter, adult son or daughter, if they have HLHS. So all good things to consider. And again, that was the Heart University's 5th webinar in the ventricular assist in the NPC Global Single Ventricle Learning Series, obviously sponsored by NPC QIC through the Heart University. So appreciate you giving us your time, and I hope you have a wonderful day. And remember, we're all in this together. Hey everybody, thanks for watching our video. We appreciate the support, and I hope it was informative. As you may or may not know, the Micah Mason Foundation has formed a partnership with the Children's Heart Foundation to create a named fund in Micah's name. It's the Micah Mason Research Fund, and the goal is to raise $100,000 in order to fund a research project that will hopefully go on to save Micah's life and the lives of other children who have hypoplastic left heart syndrome. Right now, we've got a long way to go to 100K, so I want to ask you if you would be interested in donating to the Micah Mason Research Fund. We'd appreciate your donation, and all funds go to the research and go to help save our children. So if you can spare even $2 to $3, anything would help. $20, $30, $10,000. If you happen to have that. If you do happen to have that, that'd be excellent. But even $5 helps. And on top of that, right now we do have a matching donor, so anything you give will be doubled. And we really appreciate your support and your help. And if you want to donate, go to www.micahmasonfoundation.org and click on the donate link. That'll take you to a way to donate via PayPal and our address if you'd like to send us a check. The alternate way, if you want to donate directly to the Micah Mason Research Fund via the Children's Heart Foundation, go to micahmasonfoundation.org and click on Partners, and there's a link there to give directly to the fund via credit card. And we thank you for your support. Check out our other videos, and remember, we're all in this together.